You buy a ticket, then you pay for the bag, then you pay to pick a seat, then you pay to board first. Somewhere over the ocean, you buy a sandwich you could have packed for free. But here's the part that's actually strange. Buried in that transaction is a business that puts its name on your credit card, sells your miles to a bank, and can make money off your loyalty long before you ever board another plane. Keep that in mind, because everything we're about to explain, the fees, the price wars, the bag charges, is really just the on-ramp to a business most passengers never notice they're part of. This is the story of how flying got dismantled, piece by piece, until the ticket became just one part of a much bigger deal. For most of the mid-20th century, U.S. airlines didn't compete on price at all. A federal agency, the Civil Aeronautics Board, set routes and fares. So to airlines flying the same route charged close to the same amount. So they competed on everything else: wider seats, real meals, more legroom. That's the golden age people remember. It's real, but it's also incomplete. Regulated fares kept flying expensive enough that it stayed mostly a luxury, comfortable, and largely out of reach. That tension, comfort versus access, is exactly what the US government decided to break in 1978 when the Airline Deregulation Act ended federal control over fares and routes. Deregulation didn't hand airlines more freedom so much as it handed passengers a new weapon: price. And one airline had already proven the model worked years before deregulation even happened. Southwest Airlines started flying in 1971, but only within Texas, which meant it fell completely outside federal fare regulation. It built a low-cost, no-frills model years ahead of everyone else. It just couldn't leave the state. Deregulation didn't create that model, it let it out of Texas. Once low-cost carriers could compete nationally, the legacy airlines had to answer or lose the market. It shifted one enormous source of power toward the passenger: price. And once price becomes the main battlefield, everything else on the plane stops being a given. It becomes something the airline has to find room to cut, or find a new way to charge for separately. That single shift is the seed of everything that comes next, including something most passengers still don't think about when they book: somewhere inside that fare war, airlines were already quietly building the loyalty programs that would eventually matter more than the ticket itself. We'll get there. For years, airlines competed on low fares while still absorbing the cost of everything bundled into the ticket. That model strained hard once fuel prices spiked in the mid-2000s. In 2008, American Airlines became the first major U.S. carrier to charge for a first checked bag. It wasn't the beginning of unbundling. Airlines had already been testing smaller changes for years, but it became the moment the public actually noticed. Other carriers followed within months, less because they colluded and more because American had just answered a question every airline was quietly asking: would passengers still buy the ticket with a new fee attached? They would. And once that answer was confirmed, unbundling accelerated. Seat selection, boarding priority, snacks, changes and cancellations pulled out of the base fare one at a time. Today, industry analysts have a name for all of it: ancillary revenue. And it stopped being a side hustle a long time ago. IdeaWorks Company, the consulting firm that has tracked this industry-wide for nearly 2 decades, estimated in its November 2025 global estimate that airlines would generate roughly $157 billion in ancillary revenue in 2025, up from about $67.4 billion in 2016. As a share of total global airline revenue, that's a jump from roughly 9% to nearly 16% in under a decade. For some airlines, it's not a side business at all. In IdeaWorks' 2025 Yearbook of Ancillary Revenue, covering 2024 financial results, ancillary revenue made up around 62% of total revenue at Frontier, close to 59% at Spirit, and over 55% at Volaris. Read that again: for some airlines, the extra fees aren't extra anymore. They're the majority of the business. The economics here aren't complicated, and they explain almost everything about the modern booking experience. When you search for a flight, the number you see first is the base fare, and that number is what most price comparison tools rank on. When travelers can compare dozens of flights by price in seconds, the visible fare becomes extraordinarily important, and airlines have every incentive to make that number as small as possible. Unbundling is what makes that possible. Strip the base fare down, then rebuild the margin afterward through fees that don't show up in the first comparison. Researchers have actually tested why this works. A 2020 study published in Marketing Science found that when optional fees are revealed gradually instead of upfront, what researchers call drip pricing, people tend to stick with the lower base-priced option they already chose, even after seeing the full total and having the chance to switch, and even when they're not fully happy with it. The big decision is made. The small decisions barely register. Every time passengers kept choosing the cheaper fare, the industry learned something about what travelers valued most and what they were willing to pay for separately. Now here's where the story stops being about your ticket at all. Frequent flyer programs started in the early 1980s as a loyalty tool, a way to keep business travelers on the same airline. But somewhere along the way, the miles themselves became the product. Airlines don't just give you miles for flying. They sell miles in bulk to banks, and the banks turn around and give those miles to you for spending money on a co-branded credit card. According to Delta's own 2025 annual filing, the company received $8.2 billion from American Express that year alone, up 11% from 2024, tied directly to its co-brand relationship, in which Delta sells miles to Amex that end up in customers' accounts. Delta isn't unique. Reuters reported American Airlines received roughly $6.2 billion from its own card partners in 2025. Part of what's become one of the largest and most stable revenue streams in the industry. Here's how real that revenue stream is. When COVID-19 grounded most of the airline industry and planes sat empty on the tarmac for months, Delta raised $9 billion in financing backed not by its planes, not by its routes, but by assets tied to the SkyMiles loyalty program. At the exact moment flying stopped, the part of the business built around loyalty and credit cards was solid enough to borrow billions. Against, that's the business you don't see when you tap your boarding pass. It's not hidden, it's just built to feel invisible, because it depends on you thinking of your credit card, your grocery run, and your flight as three separate parts of your life, instead of one connected system designed to keep you loyal to a single airline brand. So, are airlines still in the business of flying people places? Obviously, yes. No loyalty program survives without planes actually taking off. The seat is still what makes everything else possible. But the honest answer is that the seat is no longer where all the value sits. A growing share of it sits around the passenger, in the bag fee, the seat upgrade, the miles sold to a bank before it's ever redeemed. The airline industry didn't abandon its original business. It built an entire second one on top of it, using the first one as the entry point. That's a different story than airlines got greedy. Greed doesn't require 40 years of deregulation, a price war, and a very specific set of consumer incentives to explain it. This does. So, did airlines make flying worse? Or did they simply learn, with total precision, exactly what passengers were willing to pay for, and exactly what they'd tolerate losing to keep that number on the screen as low as possible? The plane took off either way. The only thing that changed was who was actually paying for the flight, and how many different ways they found to make sure you were, long after you'd already landed.